everybody gets in this business, they start looking around like, I need to build a team. And every coach and every person out there's building, like, you need to build so that you can sell your business, or build so that you don't have to be involved in it. And I've learned this year to own the fact that building a team with a bunch of real estate agents is not what fills my soul. It doesn't drive me. And I have great friends, and you work with some great top producers that have learned how to be great leaders and build those teams, and they own that and they do it very, very well. I tried too many times to go, yeah, I need to do that. Like, I need to have 50 agents and I should be able to have it. And then people I would hire, they just didn't work out. And I'm like, then I started to think like, well, I'm the failure. And the reality was, it just wasn't in my wheelhouse to go down that road.
Well, and I think it's super subtle because it's a wheelhouse thing. And it's also something that you thought you wanted. And only by trying do you realize it's not really something that I want. Right? I mean, building a team, I think it's so interesting because it's almost like going to an ice cream parlor and there's all these flavors, because everyone's definition of a team is just so very different. It can be very like business structured like, it could be very family like, and all points in between. I think you kind of created, I mean, since I met you, you've really, I think, found that place for your team structure that is your signature.
Right. So in addition to that, I think one of the things as people are going into the new year and, really considering what they want and all the things that are out there, there's a lot of talking heads right now, is determining what you want it to look like. So I think that there's three different things. And Brian North, and when we had dinner the other night, Brian North brought it up. He said, I think the solo agent with infrastructure is going to be more profitable and have a better life than a big team. Now, obviously, it depends on how somebody runs their team and what they're looking to do. But that intrigued me from the standpoint, because I feel that that's where I finally owned, is that I didn't build a team. I built an infrastructure that supports, and everybody here is supporting what my vision is and where we're going, and they all have a piece of that support.
Totally. You could be a solopreneur working for a really strong team.
Right. And so it's been one of those awesome things that I get to do internally with the investment side and doing those things with my team, and rather than to where a lot of agents, they build up the teams inside of teams and they stay there and they're doing their things. And that's awesome if it works.
Right.
But I think people need to start thinking about, what is it that I want to do? Because I believe that once you become that team leader and you're building the agents, you now work for them. They don't work for you.
100%.
Right? I mean, now you're answering questions, you're mentoring, like you no longer have your own. You're trying to grow.
Right.
And I do believe in that, right? You have to put that time in to get people to a operating capacity.
Well, I think it's also a great leader that can kind of help somebody achieve what they want, right? Somebody on your team to learn about what's important to them, and then help them with your experiences, your leadership, your know-how, where they're learning from you, but they're still working towards achieving, what they're setting out to do for themselves too. Like, I think you do such a great job of learning the other interests that the people have that you surround yourself with.
Who's some other people in our industry that you've met with that are doing, I think there's a couple of people that I know on the big team side, and I'm trying to think of some other agents that I know that are doing a good job on more of that solopreneur infrastructure side, to where there's like a space. So
well, you already mentioned one of my buddies,
right?
Brian, right? So I think they do such a great job of creating this open house of sorts, to where when people come through the door to want to work there, they immediately vet them to see if they're a good fit for teams, right?
Sure.
Because in those tribe environments, like a tribe,
right,
they're going to learn a whole lot and they'll probably be more successful. But they also have such a great set up for people to engage, right? So if you're a solo agent, to engage into the resources, the training, I mean, they've done a really great job, but they're a big firm. I mean, I think Corinne Wynn, she does a fabulous job, and she'd probably raise her hand and be like, gosh, there's so many things that I want to change or improve on. But I think that's a constant. I think that always happens in business.
If you're not doing that and you don't think that, then
but she really loves making sure that the people that are with her are achieving the things that are important to them too. She takes such a vested interest in in like the whole person. And then she kills it. I mean, her numbers are ridiculous.
Right.
So she's got a lot of that know-how meets up with caring about human beings. And, I think that, it's interesting. I think that we're entering an era in real estate, and I don't know if it's like the changing of the guard, people, younger people, like just these different generations are entering in the real estate space, and the things that are important are shifting and changing, right? Mm-hmm. Like I got in the industry 17 years ago, and it was P&L driven, boiler room, like get another deal junkies all day long. And we've really evolved into seeing a more well-rounded, for lack of a better word, you definitely see more fuzzy, warm fuzzies out there.
Oh, give me a hug.
But I think that it's an ever-evolving landscape right now. I think it's going to be very fun to watch as we continue to evolve, especially in Arizona.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see. So, I've got some close friends, George Lawton, his culture and what he's created. I mean, he's an amazing leader. And what's funny about his story, and this is where, you always wonder where people come from. And George doesn't share it a lot, but it's like, he came from Oklahoma, he went to ASU, and now he's running this massive. Organization that's, spreading throughout the country, and his management and his culture. And I love what he's done, but I also realized that wasn't for me. Like this does not.
It wasn't your avatar.
No.
Yeah.
But I think that, I think this is one thing that I want to share with you guys that's really important. Don't feel because agents have figured out how to not show homes, not be involved with it, and they've gotten other people to do that for them and with them, that you're abnormal because you still like to do that stuff. I've just learned, like this year, fill my cup, I still like to be out with people, but they're usually people that I'm acquaintances with, and I love being up in Munns, and I love doing those things, and I still enjoy all that part. And so don't feel like you have to go, well, I don't want to do any of that because this person doesn't do it. It took me a long time to realize, I still love the art of the deal. I still love the game, and I still winning for my clients. And that's just where I enjoy it.
Well, I think that says a lot because you have to find your favorite piece of the whole puzzle, right? And so if you're a solopreneur and one day are going to be a team owner or running a brokerage of sorts, like you hire yourself out of the pieces that you don't enjoy, but you keep, you cherish the parts that you love, right? Because they're typically the things that you excel at too, that you're just naturally drawn to. And when you have like know-how and then passion for something, it's just kind of crazy because no one can emulate it, right? You can't even teach it because there's a certain element that you just do, right? You just know how to pivot through things that just come natural for you.
Right.
Yeah. How do you in the world of know yourself, know who you're not, like how do you today kind of figure out what weapons of mass distraction to avoid? Because I'm sure, so you've evolved, but you still get pinged all the time for stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you start learning to what can I say yes to and what can I say no to. And, big topic of conversation in our household right now is, I end up, the conversation that I have with buyers and sellers, they may think they're interviewing me, but I'm actually interviewing them. Like, I want to know if I want to live with this person.
That's
if I
awesome.
want to help this person.
That's awesome.
My wife's doing the same thing in the construction business. Like, she's had some knocked out drag outs with people. I'm like, you have to start asking better questions and figuring out whether or not you want to be in this person's house for the next 8 weeks. And it's okay to say no.
Well, I think that like when you have this passion and love for helping, a tendency to just say yes.
Right.
As opposed to start asking more questions.
Yeah, I mean, okay, here's a great example. This morning, I sent a text message to an investor who I met with, who, by the way, she experienced investor family money. They had a part-time agent that just got into it, and she, screwed up the 1031 exchange, cost the family $100,000 in tax ramifications.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, but here's where it's going to get real. The story that I got at the beginning was basically it potentially was the agent's fault. Well, so they have another 1031 exchange. They came in and met with me. I laid it all out for them, sent them a text. I'm like, you're 2 weeks away. What's going on? Oh, well, we found another house, which was totally the reverse of the advice that I gave them coming from my investment background. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, was it really the agent's fault or is it the client that isn't listening? So now I'm going, okay, this person is not going to listen to me. I just simply text back. I'm like, it looks like you have everything under control. Good luck. Because I'm not going to chase that person down because she's already given me, a couple of red flags that, hey, your advice was not that good, so I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm like, okay, knock yourself out. So in those conversations, it's figuring out at what point in time do you bang your head against the wall and go, okay, they're just not listening. They don't appreciate the advice that I have, and I'm going to move on.
That's kind of big, right? I mean, I'm sure it took you a little while to get to that place.
Anybody just
because I feel like you call it out pretty quick now. Like
but anybody starting in the business, you're chasing.
Yeah.
You're chasing numbers, you're chasing transactions, you're chasing income, and we all have to do that when we start. You don't wake up in the morning going, well, I'm not going to work with those people because I don't like them, because you have to have the experiences. You said something the other day, or maybe it was Tammy, it was like, you have to go through those to know what you want and what you don't want.
True.
So if I didn't go through working with some investors or some home buyers, some sellers, that maybe it wasn't the exact thing, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I don't want that, or maybe I really do want this. Like when I look at the investment side, I love the puzzles. I love guiding through that. Like that excites me. And sometimes it's extremely complicated. But I found that that's one of those things that really gets me going.
I don't think you like easy deals.
No, those are boring.
I don't think you do any easy deals.
The business has evolved.
Yeah.
And I think we all evolve. So you've evolved.
Oh God. Yeah.
So you're going through your journey, like in title.
Yeah.
What has it evolved to this point from what it was?
Gosh, it's changed so much. I mean, our business has fluctuated with the different markets, right? So whether it was, booming, crash, short sales, REO, always had to figure out how to get in front of a transaction. I mean, in the title industry, we're a closing entity. So we need people to send us deals. And if most of the market's REOs, we have to figure out how to get those transactions.
Ding, water cup around the microphone.
It's so funny. We had to figure out how to get those transactions through the door. So we would get very outside the box. I mean, we created a bunch of programs so that we could get in front of a transaction. I mean, the market continues to evolve. And I'm like you, I'm more excited about unique circumstances in our market than straightforward. And don't get me wrong, I love traditional business, but to me, that element of the equation hasn't changed very much. I mean, there might be some nuances into the marketing that people do, like agents will do to get in front of people, subtle changes to the messaging. That's more about like how the market consumer has changed mindset, right? But I mean, the execution pieces of it haven't changed very much, right? So for the most part, I mean, the evolution about, knowing who you are, knowing who you're not is really getting your arms around what's happening in the market, deciding what can I do that still honors who I am and what I'm representing, and then being able to communicate that. But I mean, throughout this entire industry, 17 years, what keeps me in it is that it keeps changing.
Yeah, it's ever evolving.
I get bored super, super easy, and I have never been bored in this business. I actually tried to leave it once, and I came back.
Where'd you go?
Crazy.
Did you go for a hike?
I went for a hike in Peru, actually. I took a few months off trying to figure out what's my next step. And after like 6 months of traveling all over the place, I was like, went to Europe. I mean, I did all this soul searching, and I was like, I kind of want to get back into the title industry.
Man, I can only do that like for 24 hours. You're like, all right, soul searching, it's over.
That says a lot.
I'm ready to go back.
24 hours, ding, ding, ding.
Just need to go walk through a trashed house and get my reconvene.
Yeah, it's so funny because we do our hikes sometimes, and it's like I could do 4 miles or more, and I could tell that 4 miles is probably your like top end threshold for like, okay, I'm done with this now.
That's because you start sweating and.
Well, you're supposed to.
I know you're supposed to.
Yeah, you never do. But anyway.
Well, I think in this whole conversation, this is where the thought process of being outside the box really comes to play, is that you have to start thinking about who you are and who you aren't, which is outside the box.
Yep.
Most people are trying to conform, and there's also a lot of comparison in
steals
industries.
joy.
and it kills you because you're like, oh, and the comparison is so much worse today than when we got into business 20 years ago, because you have social media, you have YouTube, you're like, oh, I want to do what that guy's doing. And I think, we can go down a whole rabbit trail with that, is that, you're never going to do something as good as you're going to do it if you're trying to emulate somebody else.
100%.
Because it doesn't come across with passion, with conviction.
Authenticity.
So, right.
Yeah. I mean, we can all tell when somebody's trying really hard to do something that they're not, that isn't them. Right. I mean, nobody wants real estate professionals that are paid actors. They want to meet a real person. And right. I think that people have to be comfortable with that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like you got to figure out what brings you joy, and then figure out how to emulate that in all the things that you do, whether it's that you work in real estate, how you are at home, like find the things that bring you joy, figure out how you want to be seen. Like one of my favorite questions to people is to say, if somebody was going to talk about you, what would you want them to say?
Yeah.
That is the epitome of know who you are, right. Know who you're not. And again, I think there's a fine line between discovering the things that you want to learn or get better at compared to just trying to emulate what somebody else is doing and not really putting your footprint on it.
Right.
I
think the comparison game also goes back to a couple of things with what's ingrained from the business. Now, I understand some people are super competitive.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'm competitive is on my bottom line with myself, right? Knowing what's going on in the background, not what's going on in not necessarily the public. So I want to kind of, debunk this myth of, you get into real estate, maybe it's even in title as well. I know it's in lending and things like that. It's top producer. It used to be multi-million-dollar producer. And then it was, the transaction count, the leaderboards, like all this competitiveness going on.
The scoreboards and everything.
Which I think it's good, and I think it's great, but sometimes I think it plays on either ego or it plays on where somebody wants to be, but they do it for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I learned to own when I was going through it, is like, cool, my name's on the leaderboard, but it wasn't what I was driving towards.
Right. But I think that the results are an outcome of actually doing what you're passionate about, right? Like if you're trying to be on the leaderboard, it gets pretty hard to get on the leaderboard. Right. But if you weren't on the leaderboard, I would venture to guess there's a part of you that would be striving to have more,
But but okay, here's the misconception of it.
But not from an ego standpoint to be on the board, but
I think that's so many people lead with, oh, we did 8 zillion transactions last year. Or when they're in these environments of, when we go hear somebody else speak in the industry, I sold $1 billion worth of real estate. And you're like, there's some people doing it for the right reason. There's some people doing it for the wrong reason. But again, owning the fact that what's really important to you. If that's important, go knock yourself out. But I'm telling you right now, to the general public, they don't give a shit.
Agreed.
Nobody gives a shit that I was number 10 on the leaderboard in the brokerage, and nor do I care. It's not going to impress anybody else. The photographer's here. If I told her I was number 10, she's not going to be any less likely to call me next week.
She's not going to call someone and go, you need to work with Steve because he's 10th.
He's number 10. Just take the 0 out and I'm number 1, baby.
Yeah. Because everyone wants to work with number 10.
It's just better than number 11.
True. Very true.
Right?
Yeah. I think you just have to be true to who you are, right? So like to your point, if that is someone's, evolution, that is really important to them. Because when you're actually convicted into what you're doing, I truly believe that other people that are like-minded become attracted, right? Mm-hmm. So, but if you're not true to that, you don't attract the right people.
Right.
And so, I mean, birds of a feather, right?
Well, I think on that note, as we go into the year, I just, I want to encourage people to take stock and really think about in some, time. It's kind of like, go think. You'll thank me later.
Yes. Oh my God, you just read my mind. I was to say it's a total thinking time moment. You have to choose some thinking time and get out a notepad and write down like, who am I? You know, and what am I not like? And I'm okay with that.
And be okay with it.
Yeah.
And I would really encourage that, in the real estate space, find who you are and really own that piece. And, so I just kind of want to end with this, with, owning who I am. It took me a while to know that building a big team wasn't what it was cut out to be for me. But building a business around who I am and what my passions are really is what I enjoy doing. And it's so amazing to see, my employees and my agents that are here and what they're doing, and seeing them achieve their income goals, their investment goals, the learning capabilities. When I think about, just where everybody's going, that excites me.
That's cool. And you probably don't even realize this, but once you got true with that, look how your team has flourished.
Yeah.
For the time I've known you, the vibe you have on your team is the best I've ever seen.
Yeah, it took a while to figure it out, though. And don't be afraid to make changes.
Yeah, it's always an iteration of something.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
I love it.
I'm just trying to think of anything else. I think you have to figure out, some people are really good on the phone. Some people are good at internet leads. Like, these are all things you got to figure out. Like, I'm really good at this, and go focus on your strength. Mine is really, my strength, and what I found, it's really in relationships. It's really in the conversations with the agents and helping them, so that we can put a deal together without feeling threatened by what I do. I bought a house this morning on the FaceTime court system, because another agent was like, hey, I think you can do something with this. And she brought it, and we all win, and it provided a solution for everybody. So I've just learned that that's the stuff that really drives me, is creating those relationships in the industry. But if you're a door knocker, Brian North said it. He's like, what I really enjoy? And he looked at me dead on. He's like, I love knocking on doors.
Oh, he loves it.
And I'm like, most people, that's terrifying. But Brian owns it. Brian's not calling expireds. He's going to knock on doors. And what's interesting about that conversation, most people, if you don't know who Brian North is, look him up.
Totally.
Freaking jerk. Beat me on Agent Smackdown. But
I just call him El Norte.
El Norte. But what I love about Brian is all of his evolution. But the evolution went to one point, but he's never given up on the one thing that he's passionate about, and his strength. He didn't shift because somebody else was shifting. And he owns that.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner you can own what you're really good at, the much more success you're going to bring in your business.
100%. Very well said. Very well said.
Very well said.
So well said, I have nothing to say.
So thanks for joining us. Hope you will 5-star review us, tag us, share this with your friends. We greatly appreciate it, and we will see you next time.